Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
And they're off.
Brought to you by Go Racing. Plan your day at the races at goracing.ie.
Alright, you're very welcome along to Friday Night Racing, and I'm delighted to say our special guest this week is Joseph O'Brien. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, Chair.
Also with us is Johnny Ward.
How are you, Ger? How are
I'm
things?
very good. I'm a little bit disappointed that Joseph walks in and immediately begins to explain stuff to us about tonight's Kentucky Derby trial in Dundalk. It's a big day. It got mentioned in the news dispatches this morning. I was like, well, that's what's going on? Why is it such a big deal? And then you explained it in a second. The type of information that we just don't get from our racing correspondent, Johnny.
And then I deserve to be sacked, to be fair. But it's great to have Joseph on because he's such a rounded knowledge of the sport from both jumps and flat that I think it's a privilege to have him on here because this is probably going to be the future of Irish racing pretty much, but a fellow who knows the game very well as well in terms of the intricacies of that and obviously the qualification for the Kentucky Derby, because his dad had a runner in the last year, Middleton.
Yeah, so just explain it to us, will you? Because I was wondering, we've been kind of talking about Dundalk a good bit. Various people on a Friday will be heading up there to it, but tonight seemed to have like a special atmosphere a little bit about it.
Yeah, no, there's very good racing up there tonight. Like I said, there's the Kentucky Derby, Ireland's answer to a Kentucky Derby trial. So obviously that's one of the biggest races in America of the year, and in order to qualify for the race you need to build up a certain number of points. The horse with the most points gets into the race first and so on, so there's points up for grabs tonight in Dundalk.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah. And obviously I didn't realise that this is the only one in Ireland this year, so if you have a horse that you want to be a Kentucky Derby horse, you've got to run it tonight. Yeah,
correct. You'd probably want to have already earned points as a 2-year-old in America, or you could go to Dubai maybe for the in the March for their big meeting, but you want to earn more points. But it's you get some on the board.
Middleton did both of them, didn't he? Because he'd run as a 2-year-old in America, then he went to Dubai.
Yeah, well he won this race last year, and then he won the UAE Derby, and then he went on to Kentucky. So yeah, it's been probably a little bit controversial in America because obviously you need to win a certain number of races. So some horses have to run more than maybe what the trainers would ideally like to in order to earn points to guarantee themselves to run the race. But that's the way it goes, and it's working. And I mean, the Kentucky Derby is one of the, if not the biggest race of the year in America.
Yeah. Can you enjoy when you're at the Kentucky Derby? If you don't,
I've never been there.
Ah, right.
It's
never been there at all.
No, it's the same weekend as the Guineas in Newmarket. So like that's where Ryan was last year. Donegal was looking to ride Saxon Warrior. Ryan was riding Mendelssohn in the Kentucky Derby. So I've always been in Newmarket.
All right. Do you remember his dad was talking about the race afterwards, and it was like. It was like a war zone compared to a walk in the park. Really, it really was. It was so rough. Like I couldn't get over how rough it was out of the gates. Like
yeah, I'd say if you asked Ryan Moore if he could pick one race that he could win this year, he might pick the Kentucky Derby, or certainly it would be in the top 2.
Yeah.
It's a special race, very very hard to win. Huge field, dirt, very rough race. It's a kind of. It's a tough race.
Yeah,
and,
it's the madness of the occasion as well. Like all I know about it is the piece that Hunter S. Thompson got, right?
So I read that in college actually. Yeah,
and it's like the Kentucky Derby is decadent and depraved, and I'm dying to go and see what the madness is all about. But in the meantime, it is like the best race in the world, or one of the best races in the world.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, if you have a horse that wins that race, your stallion potential is through the roof.
Yeah. It's interesting that, like, as a trainer, you kind of need to know all this stuff, and like obviously it's no burden to learn about it, but you do need to then begin to plug into exactly how every race fits into the racing calendar in the flat, in the world, and then also every race over jumps. There's like a lot of information to process at the same time about how you're going to place your horses over the course of the year.
Yeah, well, I suppose placing horses is probably the one factor that you can control 100% that affects the number of winners that you have every year. I mean, like pretty much anyone can get a horse fit, but placing him in the right races and keeping him fit and in top shape for an extended period of time is basically the difference in training horses.
How far in advance do you do that?
So it depends on the horse. I mean, with a 2-year-old, our 2-year-olds at the moment are in light training. They're doing little canters up sides, basically educating them. I have no idea as to any of their levels of ability. So I could have a Group 1 horse, and I could have a horse that's going to be running 65s. And at the moment, I have no idea which is which. So over a period of time, you get to learn the horse's ability, which is probably on the race course you really find out.
Right.
And then after that, you can assess. We think he wants a bit of good ground, he wants a bit further, a bit shorter. You're always learning from jockey's feedback and your own feel, and there's a certain element of trial and error as well.
How do you keep on top of it all, though? Like, how many 2-year-olds do you have now?
I have 40 in at the moment.
And how many would you have for the year?
I'll probably have another 30 to come. So I think I have a nice bunch of 2-year-olds, and really looking forward to them.
What mystifies me about Joseph's operation is just that you have a serious number of horses, both codes, and how do you work? How do you toggle between that? Because obviously their work is very, very different, and how do you keep on top of it in terms of, I suppose, what your work riders are telling you and keeping that in your brain in terms of information?
Yeah, well, their work is not very different. It's pretty much the same. The routine is the same. The 2-year-olds go over a little bit shorter. The jumpers cover a bit more ground. Like training horses is actually very simple. You want to have them healthy and fit, and place them in the right races. So probably like you can way overcomplicate everything if you think about it.
How are you training 2-year-olds? Not much differently from a 3-mile chaser.
Yeah, it's the routine is identical. But I mean, like I say, the 2-year-olds wouldn't be covering near as much ground. So the 2-year-olds canter is probably 3 furlongs, whereas the older horse is probably covering 5 or 7.
And for your 2-year-old, Joseph's gallop goes back to his grandfather, and obviously his father as well. But the specific part that we know about this gallop is just how tough the incline is at the end, and how far does the 2-year-old go then at this stage to that incline?
Yes, so basically the 2-year-olds canter on the section of the gallop that is
here, look.
Well, yeah, that's the top of the gallop. So you're looking out on.
What a view!
Carrick Shore is under the
you can see
clouds
3 counties, can't you?
Yeah. Carrick Shore is down there in Waterford to the left Tipperary, and we're actually in Kilkenny. But yeah, no, we're very lucky with the facility that we have. Obviously, my mum's dad, Joe Crowley, was he basically started training there and developed the gallop, and yeah, that's our greatest asset.
What's the essential quality of the incline? Is in terms of sorting out the men from the boys in terms of mentality, or is it just fitness?
No, it's a combination of fitness and keeping horses sound. So you're running on an incline, so you've considerably less pressure on the horse's front legs. The vast majority of horses' injuries are in front, and it's the saying that 95% of lamenesses are below the knee in front, and 95% of them are in the feet. So I mean, it takes so much pressure off the horse's front legs compared to a horse that's galloping on a flat surface all the time. So that's probably our main advantage.
Is the converse true then, that running downhill is potentially kind of damaging for a horse?
Oh yeah, hugely, yeah. It's no different than yourself.
How do you get your horses down from the top of the hill?
They walk.
They come back. Okay, right. So that's it. So you run up and then slow down and stroll down.
Walk back down. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of when if you walk like if you walk a mountain or you walk a hill, like the downhill part is always the most tricky, and maybe it kind of half relates that it's just you know your feet, you don't really feel comfortable like.
Well, no. Well, I mean, if you run downhill on the road a couple of times, you'll be pretty sore the next morning. Whereas if you run up the hill, you'll probably be fine.
Can we go back to the placing? Because the 2-year-olds, I totally understand, that's like feeling the way out as they go and seeing how they develop. But for the older horses that you have that you're training to go over jumps, you know their personality and you know what their strengths are. So how far in advance would you be mapping out a season for them?
Well, you'd probably be starting 6 to 8 weeks out. Now, there's different factors to take into consideration, because you don't really know what the ground is going to be like in the time. You obviously liaise with your owners, and owners want to run in some places, and so that has an effect on it. I have Kevin Blake gives me a help with placing horses, so obviously that saves a good bit of work for me, sieving through program books, etc. So yeah, I mean it's a kind of an evolving thing all the time. You could be training a horse for a race in 8 weeks' time, and he could end up running in a completely different race.
Yeah.
You know, and also I'm a big fan of entering horses, and probably over-enter horses. I could have a horse in the weekend entered in 4 different races. And
to give yourself an option.
Yeah. So, I mean...
When do you decide? Like, at what point in the week, obviously just before declaration?
Yeah, so declarations is 10 o'clock. So, like, we would often decide at 9:59.
Okay.
You must have very amenable owners to be entering them in 5 races.
No, but I mean, you have to, like, you have to give yourself options. I'm a big fan of entering horses, and if, like, it kills me to look at a race and see a horse standing at home and say he could have won that race.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So the leaving it late it's only a bit like when if you have a bet in the tote and you see a great price and everyone rushes in at the last minute thinking they're getting value, and then the price collapses because it's a pool system. It's like everyone looks at the last minute and there's only 4 entries. Great, we go in late, and next thing you've like 12 runners because everyone was thinking the same thing. But
yeah, there'd never be more ready than 2 jump on the last minute,
right.
you know. So,
and what's the factor? Is it the field that you're up against, or is it you've kind of waited and go, is it a distance thing? What is the decisive thing at the last minute?
Yeah, so it's different with every horse. So, I mean, some horses like big field cover. You have them entered in 2 different handicaps, and you see there's 7 declared in one and 14 in the other. I mean, you're going to go for the horse that wants the big field, and the cover you're going to go for the bigger field.
Yeah.
And the fella that maybe is a bit nervous and likes to have a bit of room in these races, you'll send him to the smaller field.
Okay.
But there's different, like, I mean, there's so many varying factors all the time that...
When did you get into this? When did you decide that this is the part of the game that you really liked?
Always, even since when I was a kid, in Ballydial with Dad, picking out plans for horses and races. I always really enjoyed that side of things.
Because it seems that, like, when you're talking about, I don't believe that anybody could get horses fit and present them at the right time. I think there's definitely a skill and nuance to that, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on. But this strategy side of it is definitely the part that I think that is probably a little bit underrated when people ask about this is a good trainer. Well, this is a good trainer for these horses who's getting them into the right races at the right time. And that must be the most, like, almost the most fulfilling bit, where you get a horse who, you know, probably isn't good enough to win some races, but if you get them in the right race, away you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's... Yeah, sure. Like I say, it's one of the single biggest factors of how many winners you train every year is directly correlated.
Yeah.
Not only that, but like if you have a small number of horses, that's fairly easily done. Find the right races. If you have to satisfy a million different owners as well and keep them happy and basically say, well, I want A to run in that race, but B would have a chance as well, that would, to me, make it a lot harder anyway, and that's why Joseph's obviously doing a good job.
Yeah. Can we go back to your grandfather, and is there a story behind why he picked that particular? Did he understand that the incline was the thing that he always wanted when it comes to training horses?
Yeah, I think that was the attraction. He had the idea, and he wanted to test it out, and he wasn't wrong.
Yeah. Obviously, your dad's pretty famous, and everybody kind of knows a good bit of the portion of his story. But your mum's story is also unbelievable. That, like, obviously steeped in racing, coming from your granddad's side of the family. Like, her career, she was a trainer as well as a breeder.
Yeah, Mum was actually trained before Dad, and was champion trainer before Dad. And then when I was born, Dad took the licence over from Mum. So that was how it was, and we were very...
Didn't make that photo for some reason.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it worked. So when I was born, Dad took the licence over from Mum, and then a couple of years later, we moved to Ballydial.
Right. So you can get advice from anybody in the family, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And is there ever any debate about, like, oh, I'm not sure about that? Who ultimately makes the final? It's like...
Yeah, all the time. I mean, that's the great thing about horse racing is, like, everybody is wrong, and if you're lucky, you can be right an odd time. And there's no hard and set rules. Horses are animals, and they're flesh and blood, and like, things happen. Like, sometimes you might look a genius, and it might be completely by accident. So, it's like, I suppose we debate everything, and we'd hit each other's ideas off each other all the time.
Yeah. We were looking back, like, obviously reading up on your record. Your record as a trainer is absolutely sensational for somebody your age, but the number of winners that you had as a jockey as well. Like, when you're a jockey and when things are going well for you, did you know, was there always a clock ticking in your head because of the weight issue? Did you know that this wasn't something that you were going to be able to do forever? Or did you kind of secretly think to yourself, I'll find some cure for this. I'll somehow be able to manage the weight forever?
No, I didn't even really want to. Like, even when I started riding, what I had in my head was that I would ride for I don't know, you can ride 20 winners and then you can take 6 months off and get an amateur license. So I was going to maybe ride 18 or 19 winners and maybe pull up. And then I could have had an amateur license and rode then for as long as I wanted, you know. But I stayed a little bit lighter for a bit longer than what I expected to, and I got more opportunities than probably what I expected also.
Okay, so that wasn't really part of your career plan at that stage to get as seriously into being a jockey as you ended up getting into?
No, well, I'm not saying I ever had much of a career plan, but I was very, very lucky to ride some fantastic horses, and for Dad and for everyone in Coolmore. And
so was the weight just a bonus then that it stayed off for that long?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I obviously wasn't light for a jockey, but I was pretty light starting off. And I lasted a bit longer than probably what I thought I would, but I couldn't have lasted much longer, really.
People would forget your brief flirtation with jumps as well, when it looked like you might actually go down that route.
I think brief flirtation is an exaggeration.
Well, I remember seeing you riding at Limerick, was it?
Well, I rode a horse in Limerick, finished 3rd or 4th.
Is that like a hurdle race, was it?
Novice hurdle, yeah. Then I went to Fairy House, I think, for the Easter Festival, and I was upsides in front of the last and fell off. Then I was riding the horse the next day. I was in reverse and the horse fell, and then I was declared. I knew that evening that was it. So then I was declared on 2 the next day. So I pulled one up and finished 2nd on the other one. That was it. Did
you think at any stage actually I might make go of this, or was it testing the waters a bit?
No, I had kind of thought in my head that it'd be nice to ride a winner over jumps. So that's all really I wanted to do. And then I realised that my ego could do without a winner over jumps.
Fran Berry, when he was on the show, was that 2 weeks ago? So I'm too young to remember him riding over jumps, but he obviously went the other way, which is kind of more common in a way. But anyway, we went for a pint after the show, and we went to the local pub, and the barman comes out and he recognised Fran. And I could tell that he recognised him, and I was kind of like, what's he going to ask him here? And he shook his hand and he said, what do you want to drink? And Fran said, whatever, I'll have a... Fran is obviously injured, so, you know, he's taking a bit of time out. And he goes to Fran, he goes, fair play to you, you got me out in Cheltenham 20 years ago. So he backed a horse that Fran was riding at Cheltenham that was like 20-1 for his father, Frank. Like, I think he rode once at Cheltenham, if I'm wrong. Maybe 2 seasons. But the barman, he got him out of jail with a bet 20 years ago. And I was just like, this is a mad world.
Yeah, Fran was a very, very good jump jockey. He done really well and had like a huge number of rides. So obviously then he came back to the flat afterwards. But I wasn't near serious.
Totally different though, isn't it? Like it must be.
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, I think the key to it is probably you need to be like I done a lot of eventing when I was younger. Then I'd say I didn't jump a horse for 4 or 5 years. And then I went riding over jumps. So I mean, your eye isn't in, or I mean, like I only half done it, and like I mean, half doing anything is a waste of time. So
it's kind of like in Soviet Russia when stuff is purged from history that never happened.
Yeah,
his riding career over jumps actually never happened. But I remember.
So we have a picture. This is Fairy House.
That sums it up.
Yeah.
Marconi, is that the name? That was the name of the horse?
It, yeah. That was kind of a moment of realisation.
Pat Healy might have taken that and got a bit of a kick out of it.
But you obviously loved that though. From that point, you decide you're going to be a jockey for a while anyway, and.
Well, no, from that point it was all over. That was the end of it.
Oh, so this is after your flat career?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Well, no.
Did you ride the flat after that?
I think I probably did for a while. Yeah.
For a little while.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay. It's the same with Donica right now, though. It's so similar. Like Donica's been champion jockey, and now he's saying, I'm going to do 9 stone this year, all going well. But he's also saying, like, this is not going to last, basically, and it's mad. And I have to say, when he was on and he hadn't eaten since the breakfast of the day before, and he kind of said nonchalantly, you really admire what you guys went through and jockeys in general.
Yeah, well, I guess Donica and myself are very lucky that we're wasting to ride at 9 stone or 8.12 or whatever the weight is, but we're riding very good horses. There's jockeys all over Ireland and England and all over the world. Wasting every bit is hard. To ride
Moderate horses, yeah.
moderate horses. So I mean, we almost I'd feel bad kind of complaining about struggling with my weight because I was in such a privileged position.
But it does bring us to that whole issue. It's not safe for people. We know from loads of other sports, we know from MMA, from boxing, where sports people waste to perform, and then something happens and they have an accident and the body's not ready for it. Like, it's not safe for jockeys to continue to waste like this, is it?
Well, I suppose the main difference is with MMA and boxing is that they have their weigh in 24 hours maybe before they fight. So they can be a stone heavier, or 10 pounds or 12 pounds or whatever the case may be, heavier when they actually have to perform, whereas a jockey has to weigh back in afterwards as well. So they make the weight half an hour before the race, and then 10 minutes after the race they have to be the same weight. So you actually have to perform at your bare minimum, so that's probably the most dangerous part of it.
Is that sustainable, do you think, for the sport, or is it something that needs to be addressed?
Well, there's been plenty of people speak about it, far more qualified than me, and as far as doctors and nutritionists, that it's probably not sustainable. Kids are getting bigger. Every year at the racing school, you see people are getting heavier, and the weights are staying pretty much stagnant now. In fairness, Adrian McGoldrick and everyone are doing a fantastic job in trying to push it as far as they can. But it's probably they're probably fighting, falling on deaf ears a little bit.
Yeah, because we had Adrian McGoldrick on the show, and he was making the same point that he didn't think it was sustainable either, that there's definitely going to have to be some change. Like, is there an easy change where everybody just moves the weights up and everybody agrees we're going to move the weights up and everybody rides at 9.5 stone, or? Well,
there is, but like that kind of a thing doesn't happen. Like, it's easy to say that and to do it, but for it to be actually put into practice is a far bigger issue. For a number of authorities to stand together, you don't see that happen very often.
What is the issue though? Apart from, like, obviously you want to have a historic kind of precedence where horses in the Guineas always had 9 stone or whatever. Like, but do you not have to reflect that it is a changing world as well, and you have to respect humans as well as animals?
You absolutely do, but like I say, I don't see a case in the foreseeable future of all the weights being a half a stone higher. It probably in years to come there'll be far more South American and the likes riders, because they're naturally lighter and they can make weights easier.
Yeah, in the States there are no American riders.
Nearly none, yeah. Absolutely nearly none, and that's because the weights are so light, none of them can make the weight.
Do you see more South American riders, or do you see more maybe female riders as well, because naturally they'd be maybe a bit lighter? Yeah,
maybe so, but your likes of Sylvester de Souza, Joe Moreira, all them guys they're natural lightweights, and that's why they're been so successful.
Mm-hmm. In terms of what it's like now being a trainer, and this time of year, you're very active on social media and Instagram. There's loads of great videos of you on the gallops. Is this something that's important for you as somebody who is communicating with obviously the racing public, but also your owners as well, to kind of give them a little bit of insight to what's happening?
Yeah, I guess so. Kind of all happened by accident, really. So yeah, we keep up to date with bits of social media, and we post.
This is your Instagram account.
Yeah, so we little things like that all the time. So
what age is this horse?
No harm. That's House of Parliament. He was, I think it was that last summer sometime.
Yeah, could have been just having the crack.
Yeah, so after exercise, all the horses have a little pick of grass on the way home, and they have a little roll around. So yes,
just like a nice life they have.
And he could reel off the names of all the horses by looking at them as well, which would be 200 and something odd, like his dad, which is I don't think any of us would be able to even have a go at that, even if we kind of had a look at them and studied it, which I always find that fascinating about trainers, is they can just kind of look at the horse and know straight away who it is. What's the best part about the job for you?
Winning. It's all anyone that trains horses train winners, and if that's not what you want to do, then you're in the wrong job, so you have to have winners, and it's all about having winners.
What's the difference between being a winning trainer and being a winning jockey?
There's far more goes into training a horse to win a race. You probably have seen the horse for at least every day for at least 3 months, probably more. and you've been with him through his whole preparation. So I mean, to ride a winner, you meet the horse in the parade ring. The trainer tells you what to do. You jump up on him, and you jump off him. You say, "Sorry, you can see you in a month's time."
Are you a better trainer because you were a jockey?
I don't know if. I guess I know a lot of the racetracks pretty well, so I probably know what attributes a horse needs, say, for race course. But I guess, I mean, insofar as actual horsemanship skills, you don't learn a whole lot as a jockey. You just ride them. You don't. Most jockeys are not back in the evening feeling horses' legs and feeding and all that side of it.
But even like if you're giving a jockey instructions, you've been on the other side of that now, so you kind of, like, you understand exactly how that would be received. Maybe you don't. Maybe everybody's different. Maybe some jockeys listen to you and do exactly what you ask them to, and some jockeys are like, yeah, whatever. I kind of know my way around it. I mean, I'm sure most aren't like that, but is it something you feel like you benefited from that 4 or 5 years where you were in the weigh room and knowing what was going on, or does that matter?
I don't, like, I guess you probably would have to ask the jockeys, but I don't think I'm difficult to ride for. I like how when the same jockeys ride for me, like, consistently, or I think it's good for a jockey to ride for a trainer. They get to know how the horses like to be ridden, and they get to know how the trainer likes the horses ridden. And you'll find that a lot of my horses would have a similar personality, whereas maybe a lot of Gordon's horses would have a similar personality and might like to be ridden similar. You'll find horses that are trained in the same facility might have different attributes, and my horses like to flow, and they like, every day they do a kind of a nice swinging canter, and they like to get into that rhythm. So the guys that ride for me kind of have a fair idea how to ride most of my horses.
Is that then the definition of your philosophy of training, is that you school them that way so that is the personality, or is that...
We more school them that way because that's the way that suits the facility that we have.
Okay.
So everybody, Ireland is different to, say, your America or your Australia, where all the trainers train on a racetrack. So everybody has the same facilities. So, like, a lot of people, they're pretty much doing, like, Bob Baffert is training here with just do the same as what he's doing with his horses, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in America, or in Ireland, everyone's facilities are so different. Their gallops, everything is completely different. So all the horses are doing, like, they're going from a completely different routine to the race course.
That's intriguing as well, because if you're in Ballydoyle, you're necessarily training differently than you are in Piltown.
Completely, like, I mean, the facilities are not even comparable at all. So it took us a couple of years to get a kind of a system that we think works.
And long term, are you like, I want to stay in Piltown, or you're like, I actually wouldn't mind a different kind of facility to train, or is it all like up in the air potentially?
No, well, I mean, like, I'm very happy where we are. We have fantastic gallop and fantastic facilities, and there isn't anything there that
you're lacking. Like.
No, there's nothing that I would say, oh, I'd love to have this or I'd love to have that. I think we're well capable of getting a horse in good shape to any race at any time, and let him be good enough or not.
How important is access to natural water facility like a river or the sea for your horses in terms of their general kind of physical well-being? Probably not essential, I would say. Yeah.
Obviously, you need to have very clean water source for drinking, but I mean, we have equine spas that basically replicate the horses standing in the sea. So I mean, with modern technology and things, you can probably replicate near enough anything.
What would the difference, when you talked about Ballydoyle is different from Piltown, what would the differences be in terms of how you would seek to train or school? What would...
Oh, like, I mean, where do you even start? So, like, I mean, I have one gallop. It climbs up a hill, it's 7 furlongs, and it rises 340 feet. So it's quite, it starts off gradual, it climbs up, it levels off, and then the last 2 furlongs it climbs again. So, I mean, Ballydoyle have, like, there's a number of different gallops, different surfaces and grass gallops, and I mean, everybody's facilities are so different. Willie Munton's got every trainer is so different. So you can train horses anywhere. but you need to have a system that works for the facilities that you have. You know?
And the point of training the point of all of the training is to get them, to present them at peak fitness or close enough to peak fitness that they're going to be with a chance of winning the race that they're entered in. How do you define peak fitness? How do you feel that the horse is at that? Are you clocking that, or is there like a little bit of work that you do that's all out as it would be in a race and you go, okay, that's fine? How do you judge that?
I mean, a lot of it is probably feel and your eye. When like if I pulled the horse out and you saw a horse that looked pretty fit and a horse that was pretty not very fit, you'd have a fair idea which one was fit. So a lot of it is feel on your eye, and as well, if you have got to know the horse over a couple of years, you would have a fair idea on what weight his best performances have come at, etc. You know what I mean?
So the measurables will
you can
align with your feel for what's going on.
I mean, like, they can confuse you as well if you look into it too much. So it's not an exact science, and there's a good bit of feel involved.
And have you won races with horses that you thought were only 75-80% at their peak?
Yeah, and when I got them to their peak, they finished last.
Right, okay.
So they're the fellas that you need to underdo them, you know. So, there is every horse is different. I mean, just because one preparation suits a horse doesn't mean it's going to suit every horse by any means. Is
that the biggest frustration when you're like, oh, this one is absolutely flying, we're absolutely delighted with this, and then you get to the racetrack and everything falls short?
I mean, I've seen loads of horses that fly at home and you take them to the race course and they let you down. And
right.
I've seen loads of horses that don't look much good in the morning and they get to the race course and they come alive. So, I mean, it's...
How do you explain that? Like, what's the... Have you got to the bottom of why the hell that happens?
Well, I guess it's no different than a footballer that's trains average, but when he gets his blood up in a game, he steps up a notch. So, or a hurler, or whatever the case may be. So it's no different.
I like that as well, because they are animals kind of essentially run around the field, and a lot of people don't get it, but a lot of them actually do appreciate, despite the limitations of their brain, that they are in sporting combat and they're there to beat the other horse.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of horses do appreciate that. And I mean, horses are herd animals, and like in the wild they gallop in big herds, and they do race each other. If you put 20 horses out in the field, and the first thing they'll do is start galloping laps of the field in a big bunch, you know what I mean? So the horses love racing, and that's what they've been bred to do.
Yeah, and there's a psychology of that to try and get to understand exactly which horses are responding to that you've got to try and learn, and that's what you do in the off-season, certainly for the 2-year-olds who you don't know what they're going to be. Like, how do you understand this is a horse that we're going to have to push on, or this is a horse that we're going to have to sit back?
Yeah, a lot of it too is the pedigree of the horse. So and how he looks physically. I mean, it's quite obvious you see a horse that looks pretty mature. His couple of brothers won 2 in April.
Right.
He's by a horse that was quick. Like, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out he's probably going to be an early 2-year-old, whereas the opposite works out for the horse that's going to be a late maturer. But then as well, you could have a horse that everything points out that he's going to be early. And, I mean, every time you step up his work, he stops eating. So, like, you have to come back, start again. And a lot of it is kind of played by ear.
There's a lot of different information and data points that you've got to take in. Mm-hmm. I hadn't even thought about the eating stuff. So you basically need, if somebody isn't eating properly, that gets reported centrally, and then everybody sits and goes, okay, well, how was the work today? Is that what the process is?
Yeah, well, every morning we have, I'm very lucky, we have a great team of staff, head men and assistants, and every morning we have a report on what horses haven't ate their dinner from the night before. And I mean, anything that leaves more than a handful or would take their temperature straight away, because they might have a cold or a flu coming on. And I mean, maybe horses are just not able to take their work, and they have to be knocked back a bit for give them an easy couple of weeks and bring them back. So yeah, there's so many different variables and so many different things that you can you have to watch. And I mean, I can't physically do it myself.
Of course, yeah.
So we rely on our staff.
Do you develop a relationship with your horses in terms of like just getting a fondness for them, or is it a cold kind of, I'm training you to win races?
No, it's not cold, but I mean, you can't kind of look at, you have to be a realist as well. So like when a horse, like, he's not much good, like he send him playing polo, send him to the sales, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? So like yeah, I mean you have to be a realist, but
what
you
are
have
those
to
conversations like? This horse, the polo horse.
No, well, listen, I mean, like if you own a horse and you're spending money every month on his training fees, and I think he's not up to scratch, then I mean, you'd much rather know than know in 6 months' time when you've spent another 6 months of training fees on him. You know, so
yeah, no, that's true.
Do you get a soft spot for the characters like that try to take the mickey out of you a bit, or the ones that basically want to kind of please you in every way? Or are there any horses specifically in your career that you kind of were very fond of? We obviously don't say Nicholas Abbey and that.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it's only natural that you get a fondness for the better ones because you deal with them more and you're a bit closer to them and they're winning. But yeah, there's horses that you definitely do get attached to, and I mean, it's the horses that probably try harder, the ones that you probably do like a bit more. But I mean, yeah, you have to be a realist as well.
I remember when Ted Walsh on here and he was on about Comanche Court and he started welling up, and I was like, I didn't think Ted was that kind of, you know, I suppose emotionally involved with it. A lot of the trainers are. It's kind of a very likeable part of the whole job.
Yeah, of course. A reminder, Friday Night Racing is brought to you by GoRacing.ie. If you're going racing this weekend, then make sure you check out GoRacing.ie before you do. Loads of comments coming in too. You haven't been to Kentucky, but you have been to Melbourne. That was a pretty good trip. Was that your first time down in Melbourne?
I had been when I was a good bit younger. I did a couple of years there 1 year, so I had been then. But yeah, that was an unbelievable couple of days.
What level of expectation did you have heading down there? Were you
we were
quietly confident?
I wouldn't say confident that we could win, but we were confident we could get a good share of prize money and maybe finish in the first four. So that's kind of what we were hoping for.
You might have broken the mould as well in a lightly raced 3-year-old who's unexposed going to the Melbourne Cup, because I'd say to a lot of trainers it seemed this is very, very avaricious now to be sending a young horse like that to the Melbourne Cup, and it came off because he'd a bit in hand maybe.
Yeah, well, it did, but I suppose I can't claim all the credit. It was Nick Williams really. Lloyd Williams is the owner, and Nick Williams is Lloyd's son, and he rang me after he ran the Ledger and he said that horse is going to win the Melbourne Cup. And
do you think he was mad?
Yeah. And I said I'm very happy to give it a go, and we'll get him there in as good a shape as we could and see what happens. So
the owner's always right.
So yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, we had kind of intended on going in 12 months after, but he ran very well in the Ledger. Donegal got off him. He was wide draw. He had to get cover, so he ended up back, and he stayed on well enough. And Donegal said, listen, he's definitely value for another couple of lengths, whether he won or not, he's definitely value for another couple of lengths. So we thought we had a little bit of leeway, but yeah, couldn't have expected him to win.
It must have felt a bit special that it was such an Irish heavy finish, like yourself, Willie, and was it Harvey's horse as well? Was
Dad's horse was second.
Sorry, your father, Harvey's horse the year before.
Yeah.
So there was a famous line, Patrick Mullins, we went halfway around the world to be beaten by a horse trained 50 miles down the road. And obviously Willie is very, very keen to win that race, maybe like Ryan Moore wants to win the Kentucky Derby, but that must have felt special from an Irish perspective as well.
Yeah, it did. I mean, like it's a handicap, so I mean, with the grade ones or group ones, if you have the best horse in the race and all things being equal, he should win the race. But I mean, with a handicap, you can have £10 in hand, and the fella next door to you can have 12. You know, so it was a special day.
Even if you had to go halfway around the world to find out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So there was an intention at some point for that horse to end up in Melbourne.
Yeah, and the owners are Australian, so and the Melbourne Cup is basically the race that they want to win every year.
So do you train with that in mind, as like when you're asked to train this horse and you know that at some point you have to get it ready for Melbourne? Are you kind of plotting a course almost already, or is it? Not
really. So we started off in a Derby trial in Leopardstown quite early in the year, which he won that, and then he got beat a few times, stepped him up in trip. He won Group 2, but I think he's his 9th run of the year or something.
Right.
So I mean, it would be quite unusual for a 3-year-old to go to Melbourne like on his 9th or 10th run of the year.
You're not a year out going, let's see how we would prepare for what we would do in Melbourne next year. It's not like that at all.
No, and I didn't train him the year before. He came to me from David Watchman, who retired. So he ran twice or 3 times the 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And he won a maiden in Galway. it was kind of the intention to go in 12 months' time, but then he's what was to be his last run of the year was kind of he's nearly a career best.
Right.
So then we said we better give him a crack at it.
What's the weight for age allowance for a 3-year-old?
What is it? I don't know. Is it £5 or I think they've taken. Did they take £2 off it after last year? So
was that a direct consequence?
Well, 2 3-year-olds won it. With similar profiles 2 years in a row, but I mean it is what it is. Like you can get what difference is £2 going to make really?
Well, it could make every difference, could it not? If you're beating a short head.
Yeah, maybe so, but like I mean, when you see a horse, the size of a horse and the strength of a horse,
What difference is £2 make?
Yeah, like I don't like I won't even get into it, you know what I mean? But yeah, a couple of pounds here or there. I'm not sure if it's a huge difference.
You won the Irish Derby with Latrobe then, and why did he not end up going there? Was that?
Well, he's a complete different type of horse. A bigger horse, stronger traveller, a higher cruising speed. He ran in the McKinnon Stakes instead, which was 10 furlongs. The Melbourne Cup was 2 miles. Latrobe is a much quicker family. There is a chance he could run in it this year, but he would not be a certain stayer by any means.
Right.
All right, we should talk a little bit about the races this weekend, and we've got to get Johnny's bet in as well. Before we do that, we've got a picture that apparently Johnny received on WhatsApp. So if you never want your private WhatsApps to go public, don't send them to Johnny Ward. What's this, Johnny?
It wasn't really private.
What's going on here?
Joseph, can you explain what this is? This is definitely Galway, but what's been unusual about this photo, apart from the fact that Galway's clearly been raced on by somebody this time of year?
This is basically Johnny Ward with a big stick and he's stern. And he's trying to...
Do you want me to explain it then, Joseph?
I think you better.
What's unusual though about the photo? I mean,
I think are they 2 chase fences on a nice gradual incline.
the fences are the wrong way around in Galway. So presumably someone wanted to school in Galway over fences, but not go right-handed, go left-handed. So other than that, I don't really have any information.
Explain the right-handed to left-handed thing for anybody who's a bit slow.
Cheltenham is left-handed, Galway isn't. And there is a horse who's trained in County Galway who's going over fences at Cheltenham, who hasn't run over fences since he ran at Cheltenham last year, which is deeply unconventional. Probably a bit more... Actually, I want to ask you on this. Is there been a bit much made of that? Now, this may not have anything to do with that. I don't actually know what happened in Galway. I was just pointing out that the fences were the wrong way around and somebody's been schooling here. But how much is it a negative that a horse is like... He's going to go to the Gold Cup presenting Percy, but he's probably not going to have run over fences this season? In your mind?
Yeah, I mean, if I trained him, I would have loved to have run over fences. But I don't train him. Pat Kelly trains him, and he will be there in great shape.
Mentally, is it just prep that he has his eye in, as you say?
See, I mean, with a horse like Presenting Percy, who has swapped from chasing to hurls, like, I mean, last season he done it without any
negative consequences.
No, so some horses wouldn't suit as much, but Presenting Percy, I think he looks like he's a very clever horse, and when he gets to the front, he has a look. He only does what he has to do. His jumping is very accurate. He's not a big...
Efficient,
No, yeah, he's very efficient. He's not a big flashy horse that lets fly at his fences. He pops and pops and pops, and he measures his fences very well. So, I mean, I don't know if it's as big an issue as if it was a horse that had never done it before.
Yeah, I don't obviously train horses, but people I think are making a bit too much of the not having run over fences for me anyway, because he's just a brilliant jumper anyway. And I'm not sure the Gold Cup places quite as much emphasis on jumping as people say. Maybe I'm wrong. It's not a champion chase.
Well, we're staring down the barrel of it now, so we will see in 2 weeks' time. Racing is at Navan and Leopardstown this weekend. We have another €100 tote charity bet for the Irish Injured Jockeys Fund. We have to try and increase our pot from €2,014, which has been stubbornly stuck at now for the last couple of weeks, Johnny.
I'm very fond of that stubbornly stuck at line, but I'm going to go for one at a big price just to take the stubbornly stuck at figure up a notch. And actually, I'll bring in Joseph quickly on this, because this horse was trained by someone else and was moved to Dot Love. Would trainers ever fall out over stuff like that? Because you've had a fair share of horses now that have moved to you from other trainers. Would they, or would they wish the horse well type thing?
I mean, I don't think they wish the horse well. Like, I mean, that's like
it's just nature of
life.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But horses change stables all the time. Some horses improve for a change of scenery. Some horses get worse. So
some stay the same.
Yeah.
The Mulcair Rover is gone to Dotlove. We'd Ross O'Sullivan on last week. Ross O'Sullivan got a few horses from this owner. 255 in Navan tomorrow. The horses have gone from John Joe Walsh, who to me has had a great career so far. But in any event, Dotlove trains the Mulcair Rover. I think is very interesting. I just think he'll be a big price in the 255, and he'll love the ground. This horse, funny enough, his first run was in a maiden hurdle. He'd never run before in Roscommon, and he won at 50-1 in August 2015. So it's disappointing he's only won once since. He might have had problems, I'd say. But I think if he's anyway fit, he could be very interested in that race at Navan tomorrow.
Okay, and as always, you can visit thetote.com to get the Tote versus SP best price guarantee on all Irish racing. A couple of other races that you were looking at, Johnny, this weekend. Navan on Saturday, Leopardstown on Sunday.
Yeah, the Flying Bolt Novice Chase, the Grade 3, obviously honest Flying Bolt, it was a hell of a horse. Duke of d'Italia and Jets, there's very little between them. It's not a race I'd be getting too heavily involved in, but I had a marginal preference for Jets. Sunday is interesting at Leopardstown. Again, the fields, very, very difficult for Leopardstown to water this adequately. I'd say Leopardstown has gotten about an inch of rain in 6 months. I mean, it's gotten no rain really at all. In any event, I do like one in the 310, who's also actually the same owner as Mulcair Rover, Western Sea, who's trained by Ross O'Sullivan. I spoke to Ross in the lift actually when we left about this horse last week, and Rachel Blackmore and a Hood could help him. He's going to be a biggish price in the 310. I suppose the other race at Leopardstown I wanted to talk about was the 415, which is a good race, good handicap hurdle. Plenty of horses in with chances here. Probably marginal preference for Monatomic, but it's a tricky weekend because, as Joseph was saying before the show, like horses that have been running since last summer, the softest ground they got was at Galway and the Stole, more or less, which was actually summer meetings. They're being in the west of Ireland, you get more rain, but the east coast has been more like the Mediterranean, really, or the Sahara than normal. It's just... Does
that completely rip up all your plans at the start of the year? You're thinking, I'll do that and that and that, and it's kind of... You've got a routine all mapped out in your head, and then all of a sudden the dry comes and doesn't go.
Yeah, I kind of would. Like, I mean, a lot of horses you would bring them in, train them for the summer in the hope of a bit of good ground, and you might plan on giving them a break through December, January, and have them back for a spring campaign. But I mean, like, it's completely turned on its head. So you're in a situation where you have horses that have been in training for probably go to 12 months now, because I mean, when the ground is still good, you have to keep making hay when the sun shines, basically.
Literally,
it does turn things on their head. So we'll probably pay for it and have heavy ground all summer.
But that just means you just gotta. You can have a plan, and the old Mike Tyson line about everybody having a plan until you get a smack in the mouth. Like, you can have the plan, but if you're not ready to change it on the hoof, then you're going to get screwed.
Yeah, and as well, like, I mean, you can say the track can just put more water on, but they can't really, because, I mean, if Leopardstown go heavily water there for this meeting, next thing we come to the summertime and they have all their Thursday night racing, and next thing we get some rain in the summer. They're running on soft, heavy ground with the flat horses all summer.
Yeah.
Because there's been so much water go on 8 weeks previously. So, I mean, you can't expect them to do that. So I mean, it just is what it is.
One last point about it. The point I was kind of making earlier about the Instagram videos before we ended up just talking about them. You're engaged with an audience out there. You kind of feel like it's important that, because you've got a column with the Betfair as well, that it's important that you do kind of have... you give people access to information. You break news on Twitter all the time, for example. Yeah,
absolutely. I like to think that we're fairly open, and we're fairly transparent with everything that we do, and we're, like, I wouldn't say that I'm crazily active on social media, but yeah, we have a kind of a steady flow.
But do you feel a responsibility as somebody coming through at this stage to try and help grow the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody involved in any sport, if they can get that sport to reach a slightly wider audience, I mean, I think it makes sense to try and do that for everyone.
Yeah.
I was asked to ask him as well, what was the most important thing you learned from your father and mother in terms of training?
I mean, the big one thing is a difficult question, but I mean, we try to keep things pretty simple. I suppose when you do your best with something and it doesn't work out, once you cross your T's and dot your I's, let it happen, and if it doesn't work, move on to the next one.
I think my final question is, will Donncha make it if he goes training down the line?
Yeah, well, Donncha has had almost an identical upbringing to what I have. So,
different lad to you, though.
So, well, I don't know if he is. I think you probably contributed a little bit to making that look a bit. But Donncha is very capable, and I'd have no problem putting a horse in training with him anyhow.
Will you train horses over jumps and flat forever? Like, is there not kind of part of you thinking, geez, if I only had one part of the year where I was really busy, I might be able to relax a little bit the other part of the year? Because you have to be switched on pretty much all the time now.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd be able to relax a bit, but I love
less stress, less owners to deal with.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you want as many as you can possibly have. So, like, I really enjoy both aspects of it. I love national hunt racing. Financially, training flat horses is much more appealing, but I will like to think that I'd always train jumpers.
Yeah, and do you then have a favourite time of the year? Like, at this stage, obviously, it's pretty young to have kind of settled into a routine, but we had somebody in recently and they said their favourite time was just when the young horses arrived, because any of them could be anything and you haven't a clue what's going to happen, and there was a bit of poetry in that. Do you have a favourite time of the year?
Well, that's kind of now with the 2-year-olds, and then into the autumn with the national hunt horses, but it's more with the 2-year-olds that you see that side of it, because a lot of the national hunt horses are maybe ex-flat horses or horses from France with form, or other than the stowers. I mean, you have a rough idea of what they had done previously, whereas the 2-year-olds are literally kind of a blank canvas. So I really enjoy watching their progress over the next kind of 3 months.
That must be a bit of magic.
Yeah, I'd say that's just, and Joseph, in fairness as well, I think what he's very good at on social media is just showing how beautiful it is to actually train horses in the morning, in owning in that vantage point. And some of the photos are, I know Donncha put some on Instagram as well, are fairly spectacular. Yeah,
no, we're very lucky. I'm very lucky to train where I am, and I mean, we are kind of pretty remote compared to, say, your Currers or whatever. But we're very lucky to train where we are, and I wouldn't change it for anywhere.
Nice fresh air as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, loads of texts and tweets coming in. Everybody saying pretty much the same stuff. Great interview, great guy. I've got you. You're both going to Cheltenham previews tonight. Do you have when everybody bores you and goes, here, give us a Cheltenham winner? We're going to do exactly the same thing here now. You always have to.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about this. The absolute certainty of the whole meeting is trained by Joseph. The good thing of the meeting, put more pressure on you, Joseph. Good thing of the meeting is obviously Sir Eric.
Sir Eric.
Like, which one of my good things?
So obviously he won well last time. He's a very exciting horse. He was a good flat horse. He's taken the hurling well, and
which often doesn't happen. A horse of his flat ability, it often doesn't happen. It's just a different discipline. But he, I don't know, he does it.
Yeah, he was kind of bred for the job as well. He's by Camelot, he's by Montjuic, and he's out of a full sister to Mahler, who has proven himself a good national hunt stallion. So he is bred for the job. Beautiful, big, good-looking horse, and he loves jumping.
Would you put anyone off?
No, I couldn't put anyone off. I mean, I train him, so I think more of him than anybody else. So I'm looking forward to the race, and we'll find out a bit more about him.
One anomaly about Sir Eric is that he's actually still an in-tire, in that he hasn't been gelded. And Kate Harrington was saying this last night. This horse has such a good pedigree by Camelot, out of a brother to Mahler, out of sister to Mahler, that potentially could he have a stallion career? Yeah,
he could potentially. Yeah, I mean, like
nickname did it.
It can be done. It's more common in France than over here. But I mean, he's a beautiful horse and he's got a big engine, and I'd like to think that he could race for a little while first. But it's definitely
you'd want him to race a while. Is he chilled out about the ladies that it doesn't distract him?
No, he's very, very relaxed mind. Very, very solid horse, and it doesn't. It doesn't affect him. Yeah,
which is always a help.
I mean, I was like, it's a bit late to be gelding him now. I mean, surely he's going to know what he's missing.
Yeah, well, he hasn't. I don't think he's had any lovemaking yet. But I mean, John Gosling was talking about the horse.
I did not expect this tangent, Johnny.
Yeah, John Gosling was talking about the Frankel horse this year. This his name escapes me, but he was basically making the point that he was basically too interested in the fillies in the race before than he was about racing. Cracksman this year, and he did blame his performance for that. But the interesting thing, might be the only worry about Sir Eric, is that there's a few fillies running in the Triumph, but Joseph doesn't seem to think it'll be a problem.
Thankfully, he hasn't got a Johnny Ward's attitude.
Or Joseph O'Brien's.
On that note, lads, thanks very much, Joseph. You've been great with your time. We'll try and get you out before the traffic starts. That is Friday Night Racing this week. Remember, it's brought to you in association with GoRacing.ie. If you are going to Leopardstown or Navan or wherever you are over the next while, even Dundalk this evening, then check out GoRacing.ie first. Good luck.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
And they're off.
Brought to you by Go Racing. Plan your day at the races at GoRacing.ie.